Hello. Today we're going to talk about intonation, all those things about playing in tune. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned.
The Band Director's Desk Podcast.
Hi, welcome to the Band Director's Desk Podcast. My name is Joe Radke, and I am a teacher and a trombone player and a band conductor and a musician. And I am just here to give you some ideas when you're practicing. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends, and I'll keep making content. Anyway, intonation. Intonation is playing in tune, and it is it's a negotiation. It's trying to find that perfect frequency with another player. It's really kind of magical if you think about it. When you can get really good intonation, you are actually playing on the same frequency as someone else at the same time. I mean, you guys are super in sync on multiple levels, and I think that's pretty cool. But beyond that, you have to be able to do it, and it's kind of tricky, you know? So to start off with, the very most important part of playing in tune is your tone. Without a good tone, it is impossible to tune. And how do you get good tone? Well, that's like a really long podcast. But to sum it up, the first thing you have to do to have good tone is to listen. You have to hear the sound you want to make. And to do that, you've got to find examples of that. And fortunately, in the world we live in now, you can find examples real quick. Just do a Google search, and you'll find awesome examples of the way you should sound on your instrument, or at least some ideas. So listening, once you get it in your ear, it's a lot easier to make a good tone. The second thing is you got to have a good instrument. You got to have a good setup. There are a lot of instruments out there that will hinder your ability to play in tune. So getting a good teacher, some good recommendations is essential. And that's the last point is find yourself a private lessons teacher. If you're a high school or a middle school student out there, especially, and you're in band, your band director might be awesome, but that person can't substitute for a private lessons instructor because they're one person and they might have 200 students. So you need to find somebody that plays your instrument super well. And I bet you your band director will hook you up with one if that's the situation you're in. But getting an extra pair of ears and somebody to look at your setup and help you get to that good tone quicker is essential to playing in tune. So once you have a good tone, though, you can start really honing in that intonation. The first thing that I would do to practice intonation is learn to sing. And it sounds crazy. You might think you're a terrible singer. You might be a terrible singer, but the only way to get better at anything is to practice. So if you're in college and you're going to school for music, you probably remember these kind of books right here. And if you're listening to the podcast, this is a book. It's called A New Approach to Sight Singing. And this kind of book is really helpful. You know, it starts really, really easy with 3 or 4 notes, and it works to get harder and harder. So you could just take a book like this and you could learn to sing one every day, sing 1 or 2 every day by sight singing. You know, plunk the first note on the piano and then sing it and then check it to see if it's right. Often when I do that, I play it on my trombone when I'm done. And it is really amazing once it's in your ear how much easier it is to hear when you're not in tune. So singing is important, and if you do a little bit of that every day, you'll find some good progress in that. The next thing is, let's talk about some tools here. So you've all seen a tuner. This is a tuner and a metronome. And they do have their purpose. There is a big flaw. We'll talk about that in a minute, but they do have a purpose. And the first is it can get your instrument adjusted, right? It'll help you find the frequency that everybody else is trying to use, whether that's A440 or A442 or whatever it is. A tuner will help you get there. Will help you get to that frequency. Then after that, it can help you learn the tendencies on your instrument. So on a trombone, there's a partial that's super sharp, and being able to see how sharp that partial really is very helpful. And a tuner can help you do that. But the big flaw of a tuner is that it's visual. And when you play music, it's not visual, right? It's all in your ear. So you need to practice hearing intonation. And how do you do that? Well, my favorite way to do that is to use a drone. If you go on YouTube and you type drones, you'll find all kinds of it. Cello drones are my favorite. And they'll just play a droning out tone. And then I'll just play in that key for a little while. I'll turn the drone on and I'll just play that scale or in that key, and you can really hear whether you're playing in tune or out of tune. And the more you do it, the better you get at it too. The easier it is to hear when the intonation's in and out. So that is my favorite way to practice playing in tune. To add to that, scales. You know, my students get really tired probably of me saying this, but I think scales are more important than most kids will give it credit for. And I think if there was one thing that you could practice that would fix a lot of things, it would be scales. Scales and rhythm. Those two things, if you practice those, you're going to be you're going to be far ahead compared to people that don't. So, and scales are easy to practice. They're, pretty simple, rudimentary things, but it's learning a language. And once you get the sound of the scale in your head, that's part of tuning. So scales are essential. Okay, we're almost done. The next and final point I'd like to give you on this intonation thing is that it's a negotiation with other players, and which means that you constantly have to be adjusting. In the past, I've played in trombone sections where the other members don't adjust. They just stay where they're at. And it requires, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because, maybe the tuba player is, setting the pitch that you want to tune to, and the first trombone player that you're sitting next to isn't adjusting to the tuba. They're just playing their pitch and they expect people to adjust to them. So then as a second trombone player, I have to decide, do I tune with the tuba or do I tune with the first trombone player? If I tune with the tuba, the chord could be better, but if I tune, but then the first trombone player will sound out of tune. And if I play in tune with the first trombone player, then the first trombone player will sound in tune and the chord won't ring as well. So it's this weird negotiation. So the better players you're with, the better that negotiation happens. So the point of this is, don't be the player that doesn't negotiate. Be the player that listens and adjusts their pitch. On the flip side of that, don't adjust too much. You don't want to be chasing the pitch around, because if you're chasing the pitch around, then nobody can tune. So listen, adjust, but don't feel insecure about it. Trust yourself, and it'll be much, much better. Okay, so that about does it for this podcast. To sum it up, when you want to learn how to play in tune, the first thing is you've got to have good tone. The second thing is you should learn to sing. The third thing is you should check your tendencies with a tuner and practice with a drone. And the last thing is always negotiate your pitch when you're playing in a section. I hope that helps. And if, like I said at the beginning, if you like this and you want to see more, please subscribe. And if you want, if you have ideas of things you would like me to talk about, if you have a question, post them in the comments below and I'll see what I can come up with. Thanks. Practice on, everyone.
The Band Director's Desk Podcast.